Attila the Hun is remembered to history today as the bane of the Roman Empire, the Scourge of God, and the Emperor of the Huns, and as a figure who single-handedly shook the foundations of the Roman world and much of Eastern Europe during the 5th century. Attila was a fierce and powerful warrior as well as a keen and gifted military general, who had grand ambitions of further conquest and expansion for his empire. But while he was at the zenith of his power in 453 AD, Attila's life would unexpectedly come to an end, and his death would become the source of much controversy and speculation for centuries to come. Did Attila pass away from natural causes, an untreated illness, or perhaps something more sinister such as assassination? To answer these questions and to better understand the death of Attila the Hun, we will be doing a deep dive into contemporary ancient historical texts to analyze the discourses presented by ancient historians in regards to Attila's passing. When critically considering the death of Attila the Hun, there are two ancient historical texts which provide a reasonable level of authenticity, detail, and validity in regards to the discourses surrounding Attila's unexpected passing. The first being the contemporary ancient Roman historian and diplomat Priscus, who actually met Attila in person and provided a great degree of detail and observation in regards to how Attila managed his empire, controlled his armies, and his impact on the Roman world and Eastern Europe as a whole. His historical document, which is referred to as the History of Priscus, has been lost to the sands of time. However, a large amount of fragments have been preserved from his original works, which can assist in shedding some light on what some of the common held thoughts regarding Attila's death during the 5th century were. The discourse which Priscus presents as the most plausible cause of death for Attila comes to us directly from the works of Jordanes, a 6th century historian, who based much of his historical text Getica from the first-hand accounts and history recorded by Priscus. And in the Getica, Jordanes presents the following description of how Attila the Hun passed away on his wedding night. Attila took to his bed a young maiden named Ildiko after a heavy feast and lay there swollen with wine and sleep. There a thin stream of blood, as it is said, gushed from his nose, and this too copious flow of blood, since it could not run out, poured back through the same channels of his breathing, and so caused his death. Death from a severe nosebleed is the discourse that is presented by Priscus as the most plausible and widely accepted cause of death during the time period of Attila's passing. Additionally, this is also the theory that Jordanes purports to be most widely concurred and accepted amongst the other primary contemporary sources he had access to during the 6th century. This discourse argues that Attila suffered a nosebleed while he was asleep, heavily drunk after the festivities of his wedding day and night. And the flow of his nosebleed was so heavy that it eventually blocked his breathing passageways and led to him suffocating to death on his own blood. There's also a slight variation to this theory that some modern historians present as an alternative to a severe nosebleed causing Attila's death. Historians Michael D. Barnes and John D. Granger argue that Attila may have died from a hemorrhage due to ruptured esophageal varices as a result of years of excessive alcohol consumption. This is a discourse that can also be considered with a high degree of plausibility, as a hemorrhage would also fit the contemporary description of Attila's soldiers finding him dead and his face covered in blood but with no wound or injury visible. Even though the two theories of a severe nosebleed or a hemorrhage are indeed the most plausible discourses accepted by both contemporary and modern historians as the cause of death for Attila the Hun, there is also a third discourse which is necessary of further consideration, and that is the possibility that Attila the Hun may have been assassinated by none other than his newly wedded wife, Ildiko. This third theory of assassination is also referenced by Jordanes, as he states in his historical text the Getica, that some say that he was betrayed by his bride, who was bribed by Marcian the emperor. It appears that since the death of Attila was surrounded by so much mystery and unknown details, that there was a popular thought amongst the common folk of Rome and wider Europe that somehow Roman Emperor Marcian may have been involved in assassinating Attila by utilizing his new bride as a deadly tool of his will. However, even Jordanus does not give much weight to such speculation, as no contemporary source he was referencing provided any evidence to support this theory, nor did any hunnic force or leader ever launch a campaign against Emperor Marcian as revenge for the death of their beloved Emperor Attila. Therefore, to conclude, through the works of ancient historians Priscus and Jordanus, we have two contemporary and near-contemporary sources which reference the death of Attila the Hun. The predominant thought in both historical texts is that Attila passed away either from a severe nosebleed which blocked his breathing passageways, or he died from a hemorrhage. There was also a third discourse of assassination which was briefly analyzed, but due to the lack of evidence to support this theory, it can be recognized more as a speculation rather than a valid cause of death for the Hunnic emperor. But let me know in the comments down below how you think Attila the Hun may have died and which historical figure's death you would like for me to cover next.